The silence in the city council chamber felt like drowning. Marcus Thompson stood motionless as 7 faces stared down from the elevated bench, their expressions unreadable behind polished nameplates. Vanessa Mitchell sat 30 feet away at the opposing table, her legal team's binders stacked like fortifications, her blonde hair catching the morning light in a way that reminded him of high school, back when her ambition had seemed admirable instead of predatory. Council Chair Davidson leaned forward, reading glasses perched on her nose. The Performing Arts Center project bid has been under review for 6 months. Today we address the code violation allegations. Marcus's folder held a single document. Emma Carson sat beside him, her hand resting near his on the polished wood, but not quite touching. Professional distance, even now. 40 observers packed the gallery, cameras positioned along the back wall, and in the front row, Lily clutched Mrs. Rodriguez's hand, her gap-toothed smile offering courage Marcus desperately needed. Vanessa rose, her designer suit impeccable, her voice carrying the wounded sincerity of someone defending truth against corruption. This gives me no pleasure. Marcus and I went to school together. I've watched his career with interest. The word interest landed like an accusation. But as architects, we have a sacred duty to the public. Safety, integrity, transparency. She projected a slide, Marcus's credentials displayed like evidence at a trial. Mr. Thompson claims to have completed MIT's master's program. I don't dispute he attended, but the timeline raises questions. Standard program, 5 years, full-time. Marcus, 3.5 years part-time while working full-time and raising a child alone. The implication hung in the air, unspoken but clear. Council members leaned forward. Furthermore, his employment at Benson and Associates ended abruptly. She displayed a resignation letter dated June 15, 2019, then a second document, Robert Chen's discrimination complaint, filed June 14th. One day after a complaint was filed, Marcus resigned. I'm not suggesting impropriety, but the council deserves full context before entrusting $47 million. Marcus's jaw tightened. The chamber felt smaller, the walls pressing inward. Vanessa's final slide showed a photo from the reunion, Marcus and Emma with linked arms, lifted from someone's social media feed. We must address the elephant in the room. His romantic relationship with Emma Carson, his boss and business partner. How can we trust merit when personal relationships cloud judgment? She sat satisfied. Gallery murmurs rippled like static. Chair Davidson turned to Marcus. Mr. Thompson, you may respond. But the words froze in his throat because this moment, this exact configuration of doubt and judgment, had roots stretching back 6 months, back to a night when he'd almost stayed home, almost chosen safety over the slim chance of joy. The story didn't start here. It started with a butterfly magnet and a daughter's innocent question. 6 months earlier, Marcus woke to sunlight slicing through cheap blinds, illuminating the kitchen table where bills formed their own architecture of desperation. Rent notice, $875. Electric bill stamped overdue in angry red, $143. Lily's school supply receipt, $67 for notebooks and pencils that would last 3 months if she was careful. His phone buzzed with a bank alert. Balance, $89.42. The photograph on his nightstand showed Sarah holding infant Lily at the beach, her smile wide and unguarded in a way that made his chest ache even 3 years later. Sarah loved the beach. That single memory lived in the grain of that photo, in the way her hand cradled their daughter's head, protective and fierce. Lily appeared in the doorway, school uniform slightly wrinkled, her gap-toothed grin bright enough to rewrite the morning's mathematics of scarcity. Daddy, I made this in art class. She held up a butterfly magnet, painted in enthusiastic primary colors that bled slightly at the edges. The wings were asymmetrical but beautiful in their imperfection. It's perfect, baby. They walked to the refrigerator together, and Lily pressed the magnet against the metal surface. It caught the gold-embossed reunion invitation, holding it in place like an anchor. Are you going to your party? Marcus stirred oatmeal, watching steam rise. I don't know, sweetie. Daddy has a lot of work. But you never go anywhere fun. Ms. Emma says everyone needs fun sometimes. The mention of his boss carried weight beyond professional courtesy. Emma Carson had offered more than employment over the past 3 years. She'd offered dignity in an industry that often measured worth in skin tone and surname rather than vision. Ms. Emma is right about that. Lily hugged his waist, her head barely reaching his ribs. Then you should go. Show everyone how awesome you are. The words were a child's encouragement, innocent of the ways the world measured awesome, the calculations that happened before someone like Marcus even entered a room. Carson Architectural Design occupied the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and natural light, the kind of space that whispered possibility instead of shouting prestige. Marcus's drafting table sat near the window, current projects spread before him. Biomimetic facade designs for a children's hospital, ventilation systems inspired by termite mounds, nature's genius translated into concrete and steel. The sketches showed airflow patterns, thermal mass calculations, specifications detailed enough to build from, but elegant enough to dream through. Were architecture as both science and prayer. Emma paused beside his table, coffee in hand, her presence announced by the subtle scent of jasmine and the particular quality of silence she carried, the kind that invited honesty. The hospital design won the AIA Regional Award yesterday. Marcus didn't look up, pencil still moving across vellum. Team effort. Emma sat on the desk edge, disrupting his peripheral vision until he had to acknowledge her. Stop. You carried that project. The biomimetic cooling system was pure genius. Just doing my job. You know what your problem is? Emma's voice held affection and frustration in equal measure. You're so busy proving you deserve to be here. You forget you're the best architect I have. I'm just one of the team. Emma pulled paperwork from her portfolio, sliding it across his drafting table, which is why I'm changing the firm name. Carson Thompson Design. Effective next month. Your partner now. The words didn't register immediately, as if spoken in a language Marcus understood intellectually, but couldn't quite feel. Emma, I can't afford to buy in. Not asking you to buy. You've earned it with 3 years of brilliant work. Sign the papers when you're ready. She walked away before he could manufacture objections, leaving the partnership agreement beside his termite-inspired ventilation shafts, both documents promising futures that seemed simultaneously inevitable and impossible. Robert Chen passed by, another black architect who'd survived the industry's casual brutality through talent and stubbornness. He doesn't offer partnership lightly, man. You must have really impressed her. Or she feels sorry for the single dad. Robert's laugh was short, knowing, nah, Emma Carson doesn't do pity. She does excellence. You're excellent. The words sat uncomfortably, like praise in a language Marcus had been taught to distrust. The elementary school parking lot showcased America's wealth gap in automotive form. Tesla Model X, Range Rover, Mercedes SUV arranged in gleaming rows. Marcus's 15-year-old Honda Civic, dent in the bumper from a parking garage mishap he couldn't afford to repair, looked apologetic beside them. Lily burst through the school doors, backpack bouncing, her enthusiasm immune to economic hierarchies. Daddy, we're starting robotics club. Can I join? She thrust a flyer into his hands. Registration, $120. Monthly materials, $45. The mathematics of childhood opportunity, calculated in increments that separated futures. Marcus did the mental arithmetic, picking up weekend hours, skipping lunches, moving money from the savings account that held Sarah's life insurance payout. The nest egg he'd promised himself was for Lily's college, untouchable except for emergencies. Was this an emergency? Was his daughter's chance to build robots and dream in circuits worth compromising their long-term security? "It's okay, Daddy." Lily's voice carried the heartbreaking wisdom of children who learn too young to calibrate their desires to their parents' capacity. "I know money is tight." Something in Marcus's chest cracked. "No, baby, you're joining. I'll pick up extra hours." Lily lunged from the back seat, arms wrapping around his neck in a hug that smelled of elementary school soap and grape juice. "You're the best daddy in the whole world. You're the best daughter. That's what matters." The radio murmured background noise, local news bleeding into their moment. Mitchell and Partners Architecture announced today they're bidding on the new downtown Performing Arts Center, a $47 million project. Marcus glanced at Lily in the rearview mirror, her face already lost in thoughts of robots and possibilities. He had no way of knowing that radio announcement was a storm gathering on a horizon he couldn't yet see. The reunion invitation sat on the refrigerator for another week, held in place by Lily's butterfly magnet, becoming wallpaper he stopped noticing until the evening his daughter looked up from homework and asked the question that would reshape everything. "Are you going, Daddy?" Marcus stood at the stove, and stirring pasta sauce that bubbled and popped like small protests. His phone buzzed, Emma's message arriving with timing that felt like intervention. "Good luck tonight if you go. Remember, you have nothing to prove to anyone. You're building masterpieces, both at work and at home with Lily." The words carried weight beyond their simple construction. Emma understood the particular exhaustion of existing in spaces designed for other people's comfort, the constant low-grade calculation of whether speaking up was worth the cost, whether excellence would be recognized or reframed as attitude. "I think I should go. Your mom always said facing fears makes them smaller." Lily's eyes, Sarah's eyes, regarded him with seriousness beyond her 8 years. "I miss Mommy, but she'd want you to go have fun." Marcus knelt beside her chair, eye level with the daughter who somehow contained all of Sarah's fierce hope and none of her chance to express it. "You're so smart." Yes, she would. Mrs. Rodriguez arrived precisely at 6, armed with Lily's favorite bedtime stories and the gentle authority of someone who'd raised 4 children and countless others through babysitting. "You look very handsome, Mr. Thompson. Go enjoy yourself. Daddy's going to show everyone how awesome he is." Lily's declaration carried the absolute faith children grant their heroes before the world teaches them skepticism. Marcus drove to the hotel with his stomach performing acrobatics, watching his former classmates through the ballroom windows as he sat in the parking lot debating retreat. These were people who'd known him when potential was theoretical, before single parenthood and dead-end jobs and the slow accumulation of choices that looked like failure from the outside. But Emma's text glowed on his phone, and Lily's faith echoed in his ears, and Sarah's voice whispered from memory about fears growing smaller when confronted. He stepped out of the Honda, straightened his navy suit, the same one he wore to client meetings, his only formal option, and walked toward the music and laughter and the past he'd been running from for a decade. The ballroom glittered with wealth performed as casual, designer dresses that cost more than Marcus's monthly rent, watches that whispered status, conversation that moved in currents of vacation homes and promotions and children in private schools. The 10-year reunion banner hung above a bar where Marcus ordered whiskey neat on $12 he couldn't afford, a prop to justify standing alone while familiar faces became strangers who'd never quite known him anyway. Brad Morrison appeared beside him, squinting with wine-blurred recognition. Marcus? Marcus Thompson? Hey, Brad. Man, what are you up to these days? Architecture, working at Carson Design. Brad's interest died before fully forming, his attention already drifting toward louder conversations, more promising connections. Cool. Hey, I gotta... He walked away, mid-sentence, leaving Marcus with his expensive whiskey and the familiar taste of invisibility. Then the room's energy shifted, conversations pausing mid-word as the doors opened and Vanessa Mitchell entered like weather, her Valentino dress worth $3,400 of borrowed confidence. Her arm linked with Richard Steele's gymnasium-sculpted physique. People gravitated toward her gravitational pull, her laugh bright and sharp as cut glass. Marcus tried to become furniture, to blend into wallpaper, but Vanessa's eyes found him with predator precision. Marcus Thompson, I thought you wouldn't show up. Her voice carried across conversations, turning heads, creating an audience for whatever came next. Vanessa, you look well. She approached with Richard trailing like an accessory, her smile performative and cruel in equal measure. Can't say the same for you. Still working for that woman architect. What was her name? Emma Carson. And yes, I'm still there. The firm is doing very well. Vanessa's laugh cut through the ambient noise, designed for maximum humiliation radius. Oh, I'm sure. Someone has to design the strip malls and community centers, right? The words landed like carefully aimed stones, each one calibrated to diminish. Strip malls versus real buildings. Community centers versus prestigious projects. The hierarchy was clear. The implications coded but unmistakable. We specialize in sustainable civic architecture. Recently completed a children's hospital that won. How sweet. Emma Carson lets you work on real buildings now. The word lets did the work of a paragraph, reducing Marcus's talent to charity, his position to diversity quotas fulfilled. Richard smirked, adding fuel with casual cruelty. Diversity hire must be nice, right, Marcus? No real qualifications needed. Nearby guests shifted uncomfortably, some pulling out phones to document the spectacle, others looking away from the cruelty they lacked courage to challenge. Marcus's knuckles whitened around his whiskey glass, but his voice stayed level, controlled by years of practice swallowing rage in professional settings. The Children's Hospital operates 30% below projected energy costs, saving the county $180,000 annually. Facts as shield, numbers as armor, but Vanessa wasn't interested in truth. She tapped her champagne glass with a knife, the crystal ring demanding attention. Everyone, I'd like to propose a toast. The room quieted, phones lifting, anticipation thickening the air with the particular electricity of public humiliation about to unfold. You know, reunions are all about honesty, aren't they? About seeing who people really became versus who we thought they'd be. When her eyes found Marcus with surgical precision. Take my acquaintance Marcus over there. In high school, he was going to design skyscrapers, change city skylines, be the next Frank Lloyd Wright. Scattered laughter rippled through the crowd, complicit in cruelty or uncomfortable with it, the distinction lost in noise. Now he works for a woman, the emphasis sharp as accusation, drawing up plans for community rec centers while living in subsidized housing and raising his daughter on food stamps. The lies landed cleanly, mixing with enough truth to sound plausible. Marcus didn't live in subsidized housing, didn't receive food stamps, but the audience had no way of knowing. And Vanessa understood that perception mattered more than accuracy. And everyone should know what kind of father leaves his 8-year-old with babysitters every night to chase impossible dreams instead of getting a real job that could actually support her. The room went silent, some faces showing discomfort, others leaning into the drama with voyeuristic hunger. Marcus's face burned with humiliation and rage, but his jaw stayed clenched, his breathing measured, because losing control would only confirm whatever narrative Vanessa was building. Richard added gasoline to the fire with practiced timing. Diversity hire must be nice though, right Marcus? No real qualifications needed. Marcus turned toward the exit, each step feeling like retreat, like confirmation of every inadequacy Vanessa had just cataloged. The reunion had been a mistake, hope a liability, and he was halfway to the door when a voice cut through the wreckage with calm authority. "Honey, sorry I'm late." Emma Carson walked through the entrance in a simple black dress, her auburn hair swept up in elegant simplicity that made Vanessa's expensive costume look desperate by comparison. She moved directly to Marcus, slipping her arm through his with the casual intimacy of established partnership. Traffic was terrible. Did I miss anything? Emma's eyes scanned the room, reading the tension, the phones, the particular quality of silence that follows public cruelty. Vanessa recovered first, her voice sharp with suspicion and confusion. "And you are?" Emma extended her hand with professional warmth that contained steel underneath. Emma Carson, Marcus's partner. The deliberate ambiguity hung in the air. Partner in business or life, or both. Partner in? Vanessa's question trailed off, uncertainty cracking her performance. In business, officially. Carson Thompson Design. You may have seen the announcement last week. We're co-leads on several projects. Emma paused, her smile calibrated perfectly between friendly and devastating. And recently, in life as well. We've been keeping it quiet. Office romance and all. The room murmured with recalculation, attention shifting, phones pivoting to capture this new development. Marcus stood frozen, shocked but trusting Emma's instinct, playing along with a fiction that felt more honest than Vanessa's truths. You must be Vanessa. Marcus mentioned you went to school together. Vanessa's composure wavered. He mentioned me? Emma's tone stayed casually lethal. Oh, just in passing. When we won the bid for the Downtown Performing Arts Center, the $47 million civic project, I asked if he knew any local architects who might want to collaborate on community outreach. He said there was a Vanessa Mitchell who ran a firm, but I checked. Your portfolio seemed more commercial strip plaza focused. We needed someone with civic project experience. The reversal was surgical, precise, turning Vanessa's own insult back on itself without raising voice or breaking smile. Guests whispered, calculations shifting. 47 million? Performing Arts Center? I thought he was just... Vanessa's face flushed red, her carefully constructed narrative collapsing under factual correction. Emma guided Marcus away from the wreckage with gentle pressure on his arm, finding a quiet corner near the windows where city lights glittered like promises. "What are you doing here?" Emma's professional mask dropped, revealing genuine concern underneath. Mrs. Rodriguez called. Lily had a nightmare about the robotics club cost. She's fine now. I talked to her, told her you already signed her up. I was coming to let you know when I heard her. The gesture toward Vanessa contained volumes of unspoken understanding. You didn't have to pretend we're... Marcus, this isn't the first time you've been publicly undermined, is it? The question landed with uncomfortable precision. What do you mean? Emma pulled out her phone, navigating to an email thread with the efficiency of someone who'd been building evidence for months. Remember the library project you designed at Benson and Associates? I know they credited it to a white senior architect even though you did 90% of the work. How did you know about that? I'm not the only one noticing. There's a pattern. She showed him a spreadsheet titled Industry Discrimination Documentation, columns filled with names and dates and outcomes, a catalog of talent systematically erased. I'm up to 73 documented cases over the past 6 years. Black and brown architects challenged, undermined, or erased from projects they designed. Marcus stared at the screen, recognition dawning like nausea. You think Vanessa is part of this? I think Vanessa is terrified of your talent, and people like her have a playbook. The implications settled heavy between them, transforming tonight's humiliation from isolated incident into symptom of something larger, more coordinated, more deliberate. Robert Chen approached, interrupting the moment with professional warmth. Marcus Thompson, I've been following your work. The children's hospital design, that biomimetic facade was brilliant. Marcus deflected with practiced humility. Thank you. It was a team effort. Robert handed him a business card. Don't sell yourself short. I run an advocacy group for minority architects. Can we exchange information? They traded cards while Vanessa watched from across the room, her jaw tight with calculation. Emma walked Marcus to the parking lot, the night air cool against skin still hot with adrenaline and humiliation's aftermath. Thank you for tonight. I don't know what I would have. Partners defend each other. That's what we do. The word partner hung between them, its meaning deliberately fluid. A door left open to possibilities neither was ready to walk through. Get home to Lily. We'll talk Monday about the Performing Arts Center presentation. Emma drove away, leaving Marcus in the Honda with his thoughts spinning. His phone buzzed with an email notification, the sender's address triggering immediate dread. From V.M. Itchell at mitchellpartners.com. Subject, Performing Arts Center, code violation complaint. Time, 11:47 p.m. The email opened to formal language, wrapped around knives. Dear City Council, I am filing formal complaint regarding Carson Thompson Design's bid for the Performing Arts Center project. The lead architect, Marcus Thompson, appears to have violated Building Code Section 47B regarding structural qualifications for projects exceeding $40 million. I request immediate review of his credentials and project suspension pending investigation. Additionally, there are concerns about conflict of interest given his romantic relationship with firm owner Emma Carson. Attached, 12 pages of complaint documentation, legal language designed to sound legitimate enough to trigger investigation, vague enough to avoid defamation. Marcus's phone rang, unknown number, professional female voice delivering rehearsed script. Mr. Thompson, this is Andrea Kim from Mitchell and Partners legal team. You'll be receiving official notice tomorrow regarding code violation allegations. We strongly suggest you retain counsel. Have a good evening. The call ended before he could respond, leaving him in darkness with the Honda's engine ticking as it cooled. Was the reunion's humiliation transforming into something more threatening, more permanent? What Marcus didn't know that night was that Vanessa had been planning this for months, that tonight's performance was opening act rather than conclusion, that the next 6 months would test everything he believed about justice and dignity and his own worth. This was just the beginning of a battle that would either destroy him or remake the entire architecture industry's relationship with equity and talent. He sat in the parking lot, hands shaking, staring at the complaint email until the words blurred. Then he drove home to Lily, to Mrs. Rodriguez's sympathetic smile, to his daughter sleeping peacefully with her butterfly magnet on the nightstand. Unaware that tomorrow their lives would shift into territory Marcus had spent 3 years trying to avoid. The story was just beginning, and he had no idea how deep the conspiracy ran or how many lives had been crushed by the same machinery now turning its attention toward him. Sunday morning arrived with deceptive gentleness. sunlight streaming through the apartment windows as if the world hadn't shifted on its axis. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, laptop open to Building Code Section 47B, yellow legal pad filling with notes that felt increasingly like sandbags against a flood. Lily ate cereal across from him, her spoon scraping porcelain in rhythm with his growing dread. "Daddy, you look sad. Did something bad happen at your party?" Marcus manufactured a smile that fooled neither of them. "Just some work stuff, baby. Nothing for you to worry about." His phone shattered the fragile peace. Principal Martinez's voice carried tension wrapped in professional courtesy. "Mr. Thompson, we need you to come in Monday morning. There was an incident with Lily on Friday." Alarm shot through him like voltage. "Is she okay? Why wasn't I called Friday?" "She's physically fine. But there was an altercation on the playground we need to discuss." Monday morning found Marcus sitting across from Principal Martinez in an office decorated with motivational posters about reaching potential and believing in yourself, words that rang hollow against the incident report sliding across the desk. "I'll be direct, Mr. Thompson." On Friday, Lily got into a confrontation with Aiden Parker. Marcus read the report, each word tightening the vice around his chest. Aiden told Lily that I only got my job because I'm black? According to witnesses, yes. Lily became upset and told him, Martinez checked her notes, "My dad designs hospitals that save people." "What does your dad do?" Pride and fury warred in Marcus's chest. "That's my girl. What's the problem?" Martinez's discomfort showed in the way she couldn't quite meet his eyes. Aiden's parents are on the school board. They're claiming Lily was disruptive and made their son feel attacked for being white. They want Lily suspended for 3 days for creating a hostile environment. The absurdity of it hit like physical force. Let me understand. Their son makes a racist comment about me, my daughter defends her father, and she's being punished? Martinez's voice dropped to near whisper, conspiracy in a space that should have been sanctuary. "Mr. Thompson, between us, I agree with you, but Aiden's father is Bruce Parker. He's a major donor and he's friends with Vanessa Mitchell's family, isn't he?" Martinez's surprise confirmed what Marcus had already begun to suspect. "How did you know?" The pattern was forming. Connections visible like constellation lines drawn between previously isolated stars. "This isn't random. She's going after my daughter now." Marcus sat in the parking lot afterward, Lily in the back seat with headphones on, blissfully unaware of the conversation unfolding through his phone. "Emma, it's worse than we thought. She's going after Lily now through the school board." Emma's anger came through the line sharp and immediate. "What? How?" He explained the suspension threat, the donor pressure, or the way power moved through institutional channels to punish children for their parents' dignity. "That's unconscionable. Marcus, we need to document everything. This isn't just about one project anymore." Marcus watched Lily in the rearview mirror, absorbed in her tablet game, and felt the weight of paternal protection colliding with professional ambition. "I need to think about withdrawing from the Performing Arts Center. I can't let my ambition hurt her." "Don't you dare. That's exactly what Vanessa wants. We fight this the right way, with evidence and allies." The certainty in Emma's voice should have been reassuring. But Marcus knew from experience that doing things the right way often meant losing slowly instead of quickly. Across town, Vanessa sat in her corner office at Mitchell and Partners, at floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city she was fighting to dominate. The conference call displayed Councilmember Davis's face, his expression carrying the smug certainty of institutional power serving itself. The code violation complaint will trigger a 60-day review process that should delay the project long enough for sentiment to shift. Vanessa leaned back in her leather chair, expensive but worn at the armrests from her father's decades of use before her. And if Thompson proves compliance, Davis's laugh contained contempt dressed as wisdom. He's one black architect against 40 years of institutional precedent. Even if he's technically qualified, the perception of impropriety is enough. People on the council are traditional. The word traditional did heavy lifting, containing multitudes of unstated bias. Richard entered carrying files, his gem-sculpted frame filling the doorway. Legal team sent the cease and desist. We're claiming Carson stole our sustainable design concepts for the Performing Arts Center. Vanessa reviewed the document. Legal language wrapping lies in professional formatting. Good. Tie them up in litigation. Emma Carson built that firm from nothing. She can't afford prolonged legal battles. Richard leaned against her desk, his proximity familiar but not intimate. Business partnership masquerading as romance. You really think Thompson's a threat? Vanessa stared out at the skyline, her reflection ghost-like against the glass. In design school, Marcus completed a skyscraper design in one semester that took most students 2 years. The professors called it genius. I worked twice as hard, stayed up every night, and got a B+ to his A. Talent isn't fair, Richard. So this is about jealousy? The accusation stung because it contained truth. This is about survival. My father built this firm over 40 years. We're $2.7 million in debt. If we don't land the Performing Arts Center, we fold within 6 months. Richard's expression shifted to concern, undercut by calculation. Why not just compete fairly? Vanessa's bitter laugh echoed off expensive furniture that would be repossessed if the firm collapsed. You don't understand how this industry works. My father taught me, perception is reality. If Marcus Thompson succeeds publicly on a project this scale, it shifts the narrative. Suddenly, every firm has to justify why their senior architects are 90% white men. Do you know what that does to our client base? She walked to the wall of framed projects, photographs documenting 4 decades of her father's career, groundbreakings with city officials, awards ceremonies, team photos showing faces uniformly white and male, architecture as inherited privilege rather than earned merit. Dad's dying, Richard. Pancreatic cancer. 6 months maybe. The confession came quietly. Vulnerability breaking through her strategic facade. If this firm collapses before he goes, his entire legacy dies with him. I didn't invent this game. I just learned to play it well enough to survive. Richard moved closer, offering comfort she didn't want. Vanessa, maybe there's another way. No, there isn't. Get Bruce Parker on the phone. We need to ensure that school board situation lands the way we need it to. So the machinery of institutional racism moved with bureaucratic efficiency, grinding individuals beneath procedural legitimacy. Weeks 2 to 18. The investigation. The montage unfolded through accumulated exhaustion, nights bleeding into mornings, Lily asleep on the couch beside him while he researched building codes that should have protected him but were being weaponized instead. The laptop screen glowed with Code 47B specifications. Applies to private commercial ventures over $40 million. Civic projects governed under Code 52A. She cited the wrong code. His email to Emma contained equal parts revelation and frustration. This is frivolous. Emma's response arrived within minutes. Then we prove it. Systematically, irrefutably. Marcus searched precedent databases, finding 14 similar projects approved in the past 5 years, all using Code 52A rather than 47B. He screenshot everything, building a fortress of facts against the siege of insinuation. Bills accumulated on the kitchen table like accusations, electricity stamped final notice, robotics club payment plan request he'd signed despite knowing he couldn't afford it, Rent due in 12 days with only $417 in checking. The mathematics of poverty mixed with the algebra of resistance, creating equations with no clean solutions. Week 5 brought Robert Chen's office, headquarters for the Minority Architects Coalition, housed in a converted brownstone that smelled of old coffee and righteous anger. Filing cabinets lined the walls like archives of institutional betrayal. Vanessa tried the same tactic on me 4 years ago. I have files. Robert opened drawers revealing folders labeled by year, each containing documented destruction. Antonio Ruiz, Community Center, 2020. Mitchell and Partners filed qualification challenge. Project delayed 8 months. Client pulled out. Ruiz firm bankrupt within a year. Kenji Tanaka, Public Library, 2018. Anonymous tip to city about structural concerns. Independent review found nothing, but reputation damage lost Tanaka 3 subsequent bids. Jessica Williams, School Renovation, 2019. Mitchell Partners claim design plagiarism. Case dismissed, but legal fees cost Williams $60,000. The pattern emerged like constellations forming from previously random stars. There's an industry group chat. Robert pulled up encrypted Slack channels. 73 architects have reported similar patterns. Marcus scrolled through thread after thread, each one documenting casual destruction dressed as legitimate business competition. How is this legal? It's not. But proving pattern discrimination versus individual business competition is nearly impossible. We'd need to show systematic targeting across years, geographic areas, coordinated intent. That takes resources most of us don't have. Then we build the case. Marcus heard his own voice taking on Sarah's determination, the way she'd faced her cancer diagnosis with fury rather than resignation. Who else has been hit by Mitchell and Partners specifically? The investigation expanded like roots seeking water. Coffee shop meetings with former Carson Design employees who remembered Vanessa's recruitment attempts 2 years prior, these desperate offers to Marcus of $180,000 if he'd leave Emma and join Mitchell and Partners. He refused. The former employee stirred her latte, memory sharp, said he wouldn't work for someone who treated architecture like competition instead of craft. City Building Department records showed Carlos, a Latino inspector with 23 years' experience and eyes that had seen too much institutional corruption to retain illusions. How many complaints has Mitchell and Partners filed in the past 6 years? Carlos's database search produced results that felt like vindication and violation simultaneously. 19 official code violation complaints. How many were against minority-led firms? Carlos's low whistle contained volumes of unsurprised disgust. 18, all 18, and outcomes. All dismissed eventually. But average delay time, 7.3 months. The statistical impossibility of random distribution became mathematical proof of coordinated malice. Video call with Kenji Tanaka, the architect from Robert's files, now a structural engineer working for someone else's vision rather than his own. They destroyed my firm, Marcus. Not through the complaint itself, that was dismissed, but clients don't want drama. My phone stopped ringing. I'm a structural engineer now for someone else's firm. I don't design anymore. Tanaka's face on the screen showed defeat metabolized into resignation. The particular exhaustion of talented people convinced their talent was the problem rather than the system designed to suppress it. Don't let them do to you what they did to me. Marcus took notes, pattern crystallizing. 19 complaints filed. 18 against minority architects, 94.7%, average delay 7.3 months, business impact including lost contracts, bankruptcy, forced career changes. Statistical impossibility of random distribution confirmed by basic probability mathematics. Week 13 brought technical vindication. Marcus sat surrounded by design documents, comparing his children's hospital biomimetic facade, termite mound-inspired natural cooling, ventilation shaft angles calculated to within 0.03 degrees, thermal mass specifications dated and time-stamped from 2022, against Vanessa's Performing Arts Center proposal with its generic green roof concept and standard HVAC systems containing zero innovation. Her stolen design claim was impossible. His work predated her proposal by 14 months, or documented in peer-reviewed engineering reports and client presentations with witnesses. He created a 47-page comparison document, technical specifications proving original authorship beyond reasonable doubt, and sent it to Emma with a subject line that felt like hope. "This is bulletproof." Emma's video call response came within the hour. "This is bulletproof." "But Marcus, we need to think bigger." "What do you mean? We have evidence of frivolous complaint. But what if we exposed the entire 6-year pattern? The scope of what she was proposing hit like vertigo. The difference between winning a battle and attempting to end a war." Emma's office glowed with laptop light as she navigated forensic accounting reports. Mitchell and Partners' public filings showed revenue declining 3 consecutive years, debt climbing to $2.7 million across bank loans and vendor payables, client list shrinking like hope in drought, major project drought, 18 months since their last contract over $1 million. Her phone call with the forensic accountant confirmed the timeline. If they don't land a major project in the next 6 months, they're insolvent. Emma spoke to her empty office, understanding crystallizing. Performing Arts Center isn't about competition. It's about survival. Desperate people do desperate things, and desperation explains escalation without excusing tactics. Week 20 brought the preliminary hearing in a council chamber smaller than the final venue, intimate in a way that made every word feel consequential. 3 council members sat behind the bench. Vanessa's legal team created a wall of binders, and Marcus carried his single folder like David Stone against institutional Goliath. Chair Davidson opened the session with procedural language that pretended objectivity. "Ms. Mitchell, you've alleged Mr. Thompson violated Code 47B. Please present your case." Vanessa stood with professional composure that had taken years to perfect. "Thank you, Chair. Code 47B is explicit. Lead architects on projects exceeding $40 million must possess commercial certification level CC3 or higher. The Performing Arts Center totals $47.2 million. Mr. Thompson holds civic certifications, but his commercial credentials are limited." She projected Marcus's public registration, highlighting absences rather than accomplishments. No CC3 certification on file. This project requires commercial expertise that community-focused architects don't typically possess. The implication landed cleanly. Community-focused is euphemism for lesser than civic work as consolation prize for those incapable of commercial success. Council members frowned at documentation, uncertainty spreading like ink in water. "Mr. Thompson, how do you respond?" Marcus stood without notes, speaking with quiet authority earned through years of having every qualification questioned. "Chair, may I address the code citation first?" Permission granted through a nod. Code 47B, which Ms. Mitchell cited, applies specifically to private commercial ventures, shopping centers, office towers, private development. Section 47B, paragraph 3 states, "Commercial certification applies to privately funded projects. We civic projects fall under Code 52A. He pulled out printed codebook, highlighting visible even from the council bench. "The Performing Arts Center is publicly funded civic building. Code 52A governs. I hold Civic Architecture Certification Level 3, which exceeds Code 52A requirements." Marcus projected his credentials. CAC3, LEED APBD C, NCARB, each certification representing years of study and thousands of dollars he couldn't afford but invested anyway because excellence required credentials that shouldn't have been necessary, but were. Council members exchanged glances, Vanessa's foundation cracking beneath factual correction. Vanessa recovered with practiced desperation. Even so, the structural complexity of this project. May I address the structural concerns Ms. Mitchell referenced in her complaint? Chair Davidson's nod carried new interest, the shift from skepticism toward a curiosity. Ms. Mitchell raised questions about the cantilever design in the main performance hall. Specifically, her complaint states, load distribution concerns for 60-foot cantilevered balcony. Marcus pulled up engineering schematics, numbers, and diagrams telling truth through mathematics. Using finite element analysis per ASCE 716 standards, the load distribution across 8 support points yields maximum stress of 18,400 pounds per square inch. The structural steel specified, grade 50 with 50,000 psi yield strength, provides a safety factor of 2.72. Code requires minimum 1.5. We're at 23% below maximum threshold. Council members leaned forward, ICE specificity commanding respect that vague credentials never could. Furthermore, I commissioned independent peer review from 3 structural engineers. Marcus handed out bound reports, 47 pages, full FEA modeling, stress testing, wind load analysis. All 3 engineers certified the design exceeds safety standards. Vanessa's desperation showed through her professional mask. Where did you learn FEA modeling? That's graduate level MIT Master's Program in Structural Engineering. Completed 2023. The chamber went silent, revelation landing with the weight of contradicted assumptions. Chair Davidson's surprise was audible. You have an MIT master's degree? Marcus kept his voice humble despite the triumph. Yes, Chair. I completed it while working full-time and raising my daughter after my wife passed. Or it took 3.5 years instead of the typical 2 because I couldn't attend full-time. GPA 3.94. Thesis on biomimetic architecture for sustainable civic buildings. He projected his diploma, time-stamped photo that couldn't be disputed. Vanessa's lawyer whispered urgently, her composure crumbling like architecture built on faulty foundations. Mr. Thompson, why isn't this information in your public profile? I don't believe in credentials for credentials' sake. I prefer to let my work speak for itself. Marcus gestured to portfolio images. The children's hospital I designed won the AIA Regional Award. It's operating 30% below projected energy costs, saving the county $180,000 annually. That matters more than letters after my name. The humility worked better than arrogance ever could. Dignity in competence rather than boasting. Ms. Mitchell, do you have any further evidence of code violations? Vanessa floundered, strategy collapsing. The romantic relationship between Mr. Thompson and Miss Carson creates conflict of Emma stood with cool professionalism that made Vanessa's desperation look amateur. Chair, if I may. Marcus and I began dating 3 months ago. He'd been partner in my firm for 2 years prior, based purely on merit. I'm happy to provide documentation of his performance reviews, project awards, client testimonials. Our personal relationship is recent. His professional excellence is not. Chair Davidson's patience was wearing visible thin. Unless you have concrete evidence of code violations, this hearing is concluded. Vanessa grasped at procedural straws. I'm preparing additional documentation. You have 30 days. But I'll be frank, Ms. Mitchell. This appears to be business grievance disguised as code complaint. The council doesn't appreciate having our time wasted. The gavel ended proceedings, but the war was far from over. Hallway conversations brought momentary celebration. Emma's excitement was infectious. You demolished her case. Marcus remained tense despite victory, reading Vanessa's face across the corridor. She's not done. Did you see her eyes? She's going to escalate. Robert approached with congratulations undercut by warnings. That was brilliant. But Emma's right. Vanessa won't stop. I've seen this before. What do you recommend? Go meet someone. Robert handed him an address. There's a retired architect who's been tracking Mitchell and Partners for 30 years. And if anyone knows how deep this goes, it's her. 3 days later, the eviction notice appeared taped to Marcus's apartment door like a declaration of war. Building acquired by new ownership, all current leases terminated, 30 days to vacate, signed by Steele Property Holdings, LLC, with Richard Steele listed as registered agent. The cruelty was legal, but devastating. Marcus called Emma from his living room, voice tight with controlled panic. They bought my building. They're evicting me. What? How is that legal? It's legal, just brutal. I have to find a new place in 30 days while fighting this case. Lily overheard from her bedroom, worry bleeding through her 8-year-old attempt at bravery. Daddy, are we moving? Marcus knelt to her level, manufacturing certainty he didn't feel. Maybe, baby. It'll be an adventure. Did I do something wrong? No. This has nothing to do with you. Some adults are being difficult, but we'll figure it out. The hug lasted longer than usual, both of them clinging to certainty that was evaporating like morning dew. Carson Design Office received its own attack via certified letter, cease and desist, claiming Marcus breached non-compete from Benson and Associates employment 5 years prior, alleging work on Performing Arts Center violated proprietary design methods. Legal language wrapping lies in professional formatting. Emma's lawyer delivered bad news over speakerphone. You're right, it's frivolous, but fighting it will cost $80,000 in legal fees and take 6 months minimum. Emma's response was immediate. I'll cover the legal fees. But they're trying to bankrupt us with litigation. Marcus felt guilt mixing with gratitude. Emma, I can't let you spend $80,000 because of my fight. Our fight. We're partners, remember? The school board meeting happened on a Thursday evening. Bruce Parker presiding with the smug authority of inherited privilege. Mr. Thompson, your daughter created hostile environment by making my son feel attacked for his race. The board votes to suspend Lily Thompson for 3 days and require parent-teacher conference before reinstatement. Marcus's controlled fury made his words precise as surgical instruments. My daughter defended herself against racism, and you're punishing her? Parker's cold smile contained decades of institutional protection. That's not how we see it. Perhaps if you spent more time parenting and less time on vanity projects, your daughter would understand appropriate behavior. Other board members studied their agendas, complicit in their silence. The vote came swiftly. 4-2 suspension approved. Marcus left shaking with rage that had nowhere productive to discharge. Robert's introduction to Patricia Chen felt like meeting history that refused to stay buried. The Minority Architects Coalition office smelled of old paper and righteous documentation, filing cabinets containing 3 decades of evidence that institutions preferred to forget. Patricia Chen, 72 years old with eyes sharp enough to cut through institutional lies, pulled timeline posters from storage. Mr. Thompson, Robert tells me you're fighting Mitchell and Partners. Yes, ma'am. Though it feels like I'm fighting the entire system. On her knowing smile contained wisdom earned through watching patterns repeat. That's because you are. Sit down. Let me show you something. The timeline unfurled like archaeological strata. 1994, Jamal, Washington, hospital contract challenged by Mitchell Partners claiming inexperience with medical facilities. Washington lost bid and Mitchell won. Washington's firm folded within 2 years. 1998, Lin Zhao, Cultural Center Design Competition, anonymous complaint about foreign design sensibilities, project given to Mitchell instead. Zhao left architecture entirely. 2003, Carlos Mendoza, school renovation, Mitchell Partners, filed 14 separate code complaints. Project delayed 18 months, Mendoza blacklisted from future civic contracts. Or the pattern continued through decades. 2007, 2011, 2015, 2018, 2020, 2022, each entry documenting systematic destruction dressed as legitimate business practice. This goes back 30 years? Patricia's voice carried the exhaustion of Cassandra cursed with foresight no one believed. Vanessa's father, Edward Mitchell, started the firm in 1989. This pattern began in 1994. He taught Vanessa everything. She didn't invent these tactics. She inherited them. The photograph showed young Vanessa at an architecture awards ceremony with her father, 2008, her smile bright with accomplishment, earned through methods she'd learned from watching institutional racism operate with procedural legitimacy. So Patricia pointed to the photo's edges. Notice who's not in the photo? The 3 minority students who placed higher but were disqualified on technicalities. How did no one stop this? Oh, people tried. Patricia pulled complaint documentation. I filed with the American Institute of Architects in 2003, 2009, and 2015. Each time, insufficient evidence of intentional discrimination. Individual incidents, they said. But I kept documenting because I knew someday someone would have the courage and resources to fight back. She produced her final folder, Department of Justice seal, visible on the cover. 2 months ago, I submitted everything to the DOJ Civil Rights Division. 30 years of evidence, 89 documented cases across 7 states. And they opened preliminary investigation under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, pattern or practice of civil rights violations. Marcus felt the weight of 89 lives settling on his shoulders. The federal government is investigating? Yes, but investigations take time. Your case, Marcus, your very public case, could accelerate everything. If you win, and if we can prove Vanessa's tactics are part of generational pattern, the DOJ has grounds for full prosecution. So this isn't just about me anymore. Robert's voice was gentle but firm. It never was. You're fighting for Jamal Washington, Lin Zhao, Carlos Mendoza, Sarah Kim, and 85 others whose names deserve to be on buildings. Patricia handed him a thick folder, decades of documentation condensed into prosecutable evidence. Affidavits from 43 architects willing to testify. Financial records. Sealed settlement documents I obtained through FOIA requests. Use this. Finish what we started 30 years ago. Week 24. Final countdown. Marcus's dining table transformed into war room, files organized with military precision. Code analysis containing 47B versus 52A comparisons and precedents, credentials folder with MIT diploma and certifications and peer reviews, pattern evidence documenting 89 cases with statistical analysis, financial motive showing Mitchell and Partners $2.7 million debt, witness statements containing 43 affidavits from architects whose careers had been destroyed. Emma helped organize while Robert finalized presentation slides. Patricia reviewed legal language for prosecutorial soundness. This is the most comprehensive discrimination case I've ever seen. Robert's fingers flew across keyboard. It has to be. We're not just fighting Vanessa. We're fighting 30 years of precedent. Lily's bedtime brought conversations that felt like preparation for battles beyond architecture. Daddy, why is Ms. Vanessa so mean to you? Marcus sat on her bed edge, choosing words carefully. She's afraid, baby. Afraid of what? Afraid that if people see how good I am, They'll see how ordinary she is. Lily processed this with 8-year-old seriousness. Is that why we have to move? Sometimes when you stand up for what's right, people try to make you sit down. But Grandma Sarah used to say something important. Courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you are scared. Are you scared, Daddy? Marcus gave her honesty, wrapped in hope. Terrified. Lily hugged him fiercely. Then I'm proud you're scared, because you're still fighting. The wisdom of children sometimes outpaced adult sophistication, cutting through complexity to emotional truth. Later, Marcus and Emma sat on his couch reviewing final presentation, city lights visible through windows that would belong to someone else in 23 days. We're ready. Emma closed her laptop. You're going to be brilliant tomorrow. What if I'm not? What if we lose, and the DOJ case falls apart, and nothing changes? Emma took his hand, the gesture crossing from professional to personal with deliberate intention. Then we tried, and that matters. But Marcus, you won't lose, because you're not just fighting with facts. You're fighting with truth. Why are you doing this? Really? You could have let me go after the reunion, protected your firm from all this drama. Emma's vulnerability showed through carefully maintained professional boundaries, because when I watch you with Lily, when I see how you never compromise your integrity, even when it costs you, you make me want to be better. And because this isn't entirely about the case anymore, at least not for me. Emma, you're my boss. You built this firm. You're the most talented architect I've ever worked with. And the man who taught my cynical heart to believe in integrity again. They leaned closer, gravity pulling them toward collision, but Marcus's phone shattered the moment with Robert's urgent voice. Turn on the news, Channel 7, and in the television showed local anchor with breaking news graphics. Allegations of financial impropriety at Carson Thompson Design, anonymous source providing documents suggesting inflated cost projections, conflict of interest in bidding process, undisclosed romantic relationship affecting judgment. The documents on screen were fabrications sophisticated enough to require debunking, lies mixed with enough truth to create confusion. She's going nuclear. Marcus's phone rang again, Vanessa's number appearing like summons from an adversary who'd run out of legitimate weapons and resorted to scorched earth. He answered, putting it on speaker so Emma could witness. Vanessa's voice came through strained, desperation audible beneath strategic calculation. Marcus, I'm offering you one final deal. Withdraw tomorrow. I'll drop all legal actions. I'll even hire you. $180,000 salary. Full benefits. You can provide for Lily properly. No more struggling. Why now? Why the desperation? Because if you expose this tomorrow, it won't just destroy me. My father is dying, Marcus. Pancreatic cancer. Maybe 3 months left. If this firm collapses, it's his entire legacy. Gone. 40 years of work, erased. The vulnerability in her voice was real, human suffering mixing with institutional cruelty in ways that complicated simple narratives of good versus evil. Then, maybe his legacy should be erased. If it's built on destroying 89 other architects' dreams, Vanessa, you can still change. Build something new, something honest. Her voice hardened, humanity retreating behind strategic armor. You're making a mistake. I have one more card to play tomorrow. Play whatever cards you want. I have the truth. Truth doesn't matter, Marcus. Perception does. And I'm very good at shaping perception. The call ended, leaving silence thick with impending confrontation. Emma stared at her phone, pulling up Vanessa's LinkedIn post from 10 minutes earlier. Disappointed to learn of serious ethical violations in public bidding process. As architects, we have a duty to integrity. Sometimes doing the right thing means exposing uncomfortable truth, even about colleagues. More tomorrow at City Council. Comments flooded in, mostly supportive. Vanessa positioned as whistleblower rather than saboteur. She's framing herself as ethical guardian, making you look corrupt. Marcus stood, resolution crystallizing through exhaustion and fear. Let her spin whatever narrative she wants. Tonight. Tomorrow morning. I tell the truth. And I let the council decide who they believe. He looked at Lily's photo beside Sarah's on the bookshelf. Two sources of strength, separated by death but united in their faith in his capacity for integrity. Tomorrow, everything changes. The apartment felt simultaneously like fortress and prison, temporary shelter in a battle that had already cost more than Marcus wanted to calculate, but less than he was willing to pay for dignity and systemic change and his daughter's future, in a world that might, possibly, become slightly more fair if he found courage to keep standing when everything suggested sitting down would hurt less. He didn't sleep that night, reviewing presentation until words blurred, or preparing for confrontation that would either vindicate 30 years of suppressed talent or confirm that institutions were stronger than individuals, that patterns persisted because challenging them required resources and courage most people couldn't sustain. Dawn came with the weight of 89 architects' dreams resting on Marcus's shoulders, Patricia Chen's 30 years of documentation, Robert's faith, Emma's partnership that had evolved into something neither of them had named but both recognized, and Lily's gap-toothed belief that her daddy was awesome even when the world insisted otherwise. 6 months after a reunion he'd almost skipped, Marcus drove toward the city council chamber where truth and perception would collide, where his competence would be measured against institutional bias, where the future of architecture's relationship with equity hung in balance that felt impossibly fragile and absolutely necessary. The story was reaching its crescendo, and he had no guarantee of victory, only certainty that silence would guarantee defeat. The return to the present moment felt like surfacing from deep water. 6 months of struggle condensed into the heartbeat between Vanessa's accusation and Marcus's response. Council Chair Davidson waited with pen poised above notepad. The 7 council members arranged like jury, and Marcus understood that everything, the eviction, Lily's suspension, Emma's $80,000 in legal fees, Patricia Chen's 30 years of documentation, converged on whatever words left his mouth in the next 3 minutes. He stood slowly, carrying only his portfolio. No defensive armor of legal teams or intimidating binders. Council members, thank you for your time. Ms. Mitchell is correct about one thing. We do have a sacred duty. So let me honor that duty with complete honesty. His transcript landed on the clerk's desk with the quiet authority of facts displacing innuendo. Yes, I completed MIT's master's program in 3.5 years. Ms. Mitchell suggests this is suspicious. The truth, I attended classes at night and weekends while working 50-plus hour weeks to support my daughter after my wife, Sarah, died. GPA 3.94. Every grade documented. I didn't cut corners. I sacrificed sleep. There's a difference. Council members examined the transcript, certification visible in embossed seal and registrar signature, doubt beginning to crack under documentary evidence. What regarding Benson and Associates, I didn't resign because of misconduct. I resigned because I refused to stay silent. Robert Chen rose from the gallery, his presence transforming from observer to participant. May I speak, Chair? Davidson's nod granted permission. I'm Robert Chen, the person who filed that complaint. Marcus testified on my behalf against Benson's discriminatory practices. He risked his career to tell the truth. Benson settled my complaint for $340,000. Marcus's testimony was crucial. He's not implicated. He's a witness to my case." Marcus turned back to the council, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd learned that dignity required claiming rather than receiving. "I left Benson because I couldn't work for a firm that valued skin color over skill. Mrs. Mitchell hopes you'll judge me by rumors and insinuation. I'll let you judge by results instead." His portfolio boards displayed children's hospital with kids playing in courtyards designed for healing, community center serving 12,000 residents annually, 3 elementary schools where natural lighting had improved student attendance by 8% according to district data. These buildings exist. They serve real people. The Children's Hospital alone has treated 8,400 patients in its first year. He projected his certifications: CAC3, LEEDAPBD plus C, NCARB, Professional Engineer License with Structural Specialization, each representing competence that shouldn't have required defending but did. Ms. Mitchell questioned my credentials. Let me clarify. She cited Code 47B, which applies to commercial projects. This is civic building, governed by Code 52A, which I exceed. She knows this. She's an experienced architect. So why cite the wrong code? The pause let the question settle like sediment, because creating confusion was the goal. If you're uncertain about my qualifications, you might delay the project and delay benefits. Mitchell and Partners, whose firm is $2.7 million in debt and desperate for this contract. Marcus projected financial documents, public records showing Mitchell and Partners' declining revenue across 3 consecutive years, mounting debt, client list shrinking like hope in drought. Council members reacted with visible surprise, this context transforming the complaint from professional concern to competitive desperation. But this isn't really about one project or one architect. This is about a pattern. Patricia Chen stood, distributing folders to each council member with the methodical precision of someone who'd been preparing this moment for 3 decades. Over 30 years, Mitchell and Partners has filed complaints against 89 minority architects across 7 states. In the past 6 years alone, 19 code violation complaints. 18 were against Black, Latino, or Asian architects. The statistical chart showed probability calculations that made randomness mathematically impossible. If these challenges were random, the probability of this racial distribution is 0.003%. That's not coincidence. That's intent. Marcus's timeline poster displayed names that deserved memorializing. Jamal Washington, 1994, lost hospital contract, firm bankrupt within 2 years. Lin Zhao, a 1998, left architecture entirely. Carlos Mendoza, 2003, blacklisted from civic work. Sarah Kim, 2007, bankrupted by legal fees defending against false plagiarism claims. His voice cracked slightly on the names because these weren't statistics. They were lives, careers, dreams systematically dismantled by machinery that operated with procedural legitimacy masking institutional racism. 43 of these 89 architects have provided sworn affidavits. They're in your folders. The Department of Justice opened civil rights investigation 2 months ago under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, pattern or practice discrimination. Council members flipped through affidavits, expressions shifting from skepticism through shock towards something approaching understanding. Honor the difference between isolated incident and systematic oppression becoming visible through accumulated evidence. You're not choosing between 2 qualified firms today. You're choosing whether to endorse a system that has silenced voices like mine for 3 decades. Whether you believe talent belongs to everyone, or just to people who look a certain way. Marcus sat, the chamber silent except for pages turning and the quiet sound of institutional certainty crumbling under documentary proof. Vanessa rose with composure, fracturing like glass under pressure. This is inflammatory. My firm has hired diverse employees. We have 4 minority architects on staff. Marcus remained seated, his response carrying the precision of someone who'd done the mathematics of tokenism. 4 out of how many total employees, Ms. Mitchell? 42. But that's 9.5% in a city that's 52% people of color. Carson Thompson Design. 18 of 32 employees are minorities. 12 are lead designers. Vanessa turned to the council with desperation bleeding through professional veneer. My father built this firm with integrity over 40 years. Your father's firm was investigated by the EEOC in 1997 for discriminatory hiring practices. They settled for $1.2 million. It's public record. The document appeared on screen, federal seal authenticating what Vanessa had hoped remained buried in archived files. Tears formed in her eyes, strategic composure dissolving into genuine anguish. You're trying to destroy my family's legacy. Marcus's voice softened but didn't retreat. Compassion and steel occupying the same breath. Oh, I'm trying to build a future where 89 architects' legacies aren't erased, where my daughter sees someone who looks like her designing the buildings in her city. That's not destruction, Ms. Mitchell. That's progress. Vanessa collapsed into her chair, Richard whispering urgently, but she shook her head with the finality of someone recognizing defeat. No more. I'm done. Chair Davidson called 15-minute recess, council members retreating to deliberate while Marcus experienced the strange suspension between effort and outcome, agency exhausted and fate now residing in others' judgment. Lily squeezed his hand from the gallery. You did good, Daddy. Emma's pride showed in the way she couldn't quite meet his eyes without tearing up. Whatever happens, you told the truth. Vanessa stood in the hallway, crying while Richard offered comfort she couldn't accept, the weight of generational sins compounding with personal desperation and her father's impending death, complexity that didn't excuse her actions, but contextualized them in ways that made simple villain narratives feel inadequate. Patricia Chen approached Robert with exhaustion and hope mixed in equal measure. 30 years. It comes down to this. The council returned, everyone standing as Davidson arranged papers with deliberate care, the moment stretching like elastic before either snapping or settling into new configuration. This council has reviewed all evidence presented regarding the Performing Arts Center project bid. We find that Mr. Thompson's credentials not only meet but exceed Code 52A requirements. Furthermore, what the allegations of impropriety are unsupported by evidence. The pause felt like held breath across 40 observers. Therefore, the council votes unanimously, 7-0, to award the Performing Arts Center contract to Carson Thompson Design. Applause erupted, Lily jumping and cheering, Emma hugging Marcus with professional boundaries finally collapsing under accumulated emotion. But Davidson's gavel demanded silence because the resolution wasn't complete. However, the evidence presented today regarding Mitchell and Partners' complaint history is deeply disturbing. This council is referring the matter to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division for immediate investigation. We are also forwarding documentation to the State Architecture Board for review of professional ethics violations. Vanessa's face drained of color, in the full weight of consequences becoming visible. Furthermore, this council is establishing permanent oversight committee to ensure fairness in minority contractor bidding. We will implement blind review processes for all future civic projects over $10 million. And we are commissioning independent audit of the past 10 years of city contracts to identify patterns of discrimination. 3 resolutions delivered simultaneously. Personal victory for Marcus, accountability for Vanessa, systemic reform for everyone who came after, Institutional change emerging from individual courage in ways that felt simultaneously inevitable and miraculous. Press exploded with questions, cameras flashing, but Marcus moved through the chaos toward Lily, lifting her in his arms with the particular joy of parents who've protected their children from witnessing their own defeat. Outside, reporters swarmed with microphones and urgent questions. "Mr. Thompson, how does it feel? This isn't about me. It's about 89 families who deserved fair shot and didn't get it. I'm grateful the council chose fairness over precedent. What's next for Mitchell and partners? That's for the authorities to decide. I hope they find accountability, not just punishment. People deserve second chances. But systems need to change. Do you have a message for other minority architects?" Marcus looked directly at the camera, speaking to audiences beyond this moment. "Your talent is real. Your vision matters. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. And when they try to silence you, document everything. Find your allies. Tell the truth." Vanessa exited through side door, reporters swarming until her lawyer cleared path, and Marcus caught glimpse of her face through car window, tears streaming, the particular devastation of someone watching inheritance collapse under weight of its own corruption. 3 months later, the news montage compressed institutional response into visual shorthand. Local evening broadcast showing Vanessa's lawyer delivering no comment outside federal courthouse. Kyron reading Mitchell and Partners CEO faces discrimination probe. National Architecture Journal headline declaring DOJ expands civil rights investigation, subheading noting 89 architects across 7 states potentially affected. City Council press conference with members calling for architecture industry reform. Chair Davidson stating this pattern cannot continue. Change starts today. Business News showed Carson Thompson designs expansion, 14 new contracts pending. Emma interviewed saying Marcus Thompson represents the best of our profession with pride that had evolved beyond professional into something more personal. Architecture Trade Publication announced AIA's new transparency requirements for bid challenges, industry responding to Thompson case with policy changes that would have seemed impossible 6 months earlier. Federal courthouse steps became stage for DOJ announcement. Civil Rights Division attorney standing at podium with photos of affected architects arrayed behind her like memorial to suppressed talent. After 3-month investigation, but the Department of Justice has filed civil rights charges against Mitchell and Partners Architecture. Our investigation revealed patterns spanning 32 years, affecting 89 minority architects across 7 states. We are seeking $22 million in damages for affected parties, plus mandatory structural reforms. The attorney's voice carried institutional authority, finally aligned with justice rather than opposing it. This case demonstrates that civil rights enforcement is not relic of the past. Discrimination evolves, but justice must keep pace. We thank Marcus Thompson and Patricia Chen for their courage in bringing this pattern to light. Marcus watched from his apartment. New place, better neighborhood, a rent he could almost afford now, with Lily beside him and Emma close enough that their shoulders touched in ways that suggested partnership had transformed into something neither needed to label, but both recognized. "Daddy, you're on the news. Those other 88 people are the news, baby. I just helped tell their stories." Robert's call interrupted, urgent excitement audible. Turn to Channel 5. Different station showed interview with Kenji Tanaka, the architect who'd been reduced from designer to structural engineer, whose firm had been destroyed by Mitchell and Partners tactics in 2018. For 15 years, I thought I wasn't good enough, that I'd failed as architect. Marcus Thompson showed me it wasn't my failure. It was a system designed to make us fail. I'm restarting my firm next month. 5 other architects from the case are joining me. Marcus felt tears he'd been holding for months finally releasing, witnessing resurrection of careers he'd thought permanently destroyed. They're starting over. The industry changes. Montage showed American Institute of Architects National Conference implementing mandatory bias training for all members. New requirement that bid challenges include documented technical evidence rather than subjective claims. State Architecture Board established Complaint Review Board with 50% minority representation. Frivolous complaints now resulting in professional sanctions that created actual deterrent. University Architecture Department showed diverse class of students. Professor displaying Marcus's hospital design as example while explaining how the Thompson case changed their profession. Students entering more equitable field because of people willing to risk everything for systemic change. City Hall press conference announced all 89 families affected by Mitchell Partners tactics would receive settlement funds. Total compensation $22 million, averaging $247,000 per affected architect. Material acknowledgement that couldn't restore lost years but provided foundation for new beginnings. Carson Thompson Designs Office expansion revealed new sign. Minority Architect Fellowship Program, with 6 young architects of varied backgrounds working at stations, Marcus mentoring young black woman through cantilever calculations, showing her the math that transformed vision into structure. 9 months after the council vote. The Performing Arts Center groundbreaking ceremony gathered city officials, press, architects from Patricia's coalition, and Lily wearing hard hat 3 sizes too large, her gap-toothed smile bright under construction site sun. Mayor stood at temporary podium, construction equipment arranged behind her like promise of futures being built. Today, we break ground on Downtown Performing Arts Center. But this building represents more than architecture. It represents the principle that talent belongs to everyone. She invited Marcus forward, and he stood with Lily holding his hand, looking at faces that had supported him through 6 months of institutional combat and 3 decades of prior suppression. 10 months ago, I was humiliated at high school reunion. I stood in a room full of people who thought they knew my worth. They were wrong, not because I proved them wrong, but because they never had the right to define me in the first place. He knelt to Lily's level, speaking to her, but knowing his words carried beyond this moment. My daughter Lily asked me once why someone was mean to me. I told her, some people are afraid that if others see how good you are, they'll see how ordinary the mean person is. This building will stand for 100 years, long after today's fears and prejudices are forgotten. But the real legacy isn't concrete and steel. It's the 89 architects who now have fair chance. Marcus looked at Patricia, Robert, other architects scattered through the crowd, each representing dreams deferred but not destroyed. For Jamal Washington, who should have designed that hospital in 1994? For Lin Zhao, who should still be practicing? For every dream deferred by systemic cruelty, this building is yours too. Lily tugged his sleeve, her whisper loud enough for microphone to catch. Daddy, can I push the button? Laughter rippled through crowd, tension releasing into shared joy. Of course, baby. Lily pulled ceremonial lever, construction equipment roaring to life, confetti cannons firing, applause washing over them like benediction, and Marcus felt the particular satisfaction of someone who'd risked everything and discovered that dignity could not only survive institutional attack, but transform systems that had operated unopposed for decades. Beach sunset painted sky in oranges and purples, Marcus and Lily and Emma building sandcastle together, aren't the 3 of them creating architecture from temporary materials with the unself-conscious joy of people no longer performing for external judgment. Lily focused on moat construction with engineering precision that suggested her father's influence. We need moat. Every castle needs protection. Emma helped dig while Marcus watched them together, contentment settling like foundation under structure finally stable. This beach, this specific stretch of sand, held Sarah's memory in its grain. The photograph on his nightstand showing her here with infant Lily, and bringing Emma to this space felt like introduction across time, past and future, occupying the same geography. Daddy, this is where you and Mommy used to come, right? Lily's memory surprised him. She'd been too young to consciously remember. But children absorbed more than adults credited. Yes, baby. Your mom loved the beach. Do you think Mommy would like Ms. Emma? Marcus and Emma exchanged glance, loaded with unspoken negotiations about how to navigate this moment that mattered more than either wanted to admit. I think Mommy would love that I found someone who makes me smile again, and who makes you happy. Lily's 8-year-old wisdom cut through adult complexity with characteristic directness. Good, because I already told Grandma Rodriguez that Ms. Emma is going to be my bonus mom. Emma's eyes filled with tears she tried to hide behind sunglasses. Bonus mom? You can't replace my real mom. But you can be bonus, like bonus fries. The comparison to fast food extras shouldn't have been profound, but somehow contained perfect logic. The way children's metaphors often captured truth, adults obscured with sophisticated language. Did she just compare me to French fries? Marcus laughed, the sound genuine and unguarded in ways he'd forgotten were possible during 6 months of institutional combat. It's the highest compliment in her world. They continued building sandcastle, camera perspective pulling back to show 3 figures silhouetted against sunset. Temporary architecture that would be washed away by morning tide, but mattered in its creation, the act of building together more significant than permanence. Marcus's voiceover emerged like reflection rather than narration. My name is Marcus Thompson. I'm a father, an architect, and a man who refused to be defined by someone else's cruelty. Dignity isn't about never falling. It's about standing back up. Again and again, until the whole world sees what you always knew you were. And sometimes, the most beautiful designs aren't the buildings we create. They're the lives we build together, one loving moment at a time. The montage of final images showed progression through seasons. Marcus and Emma and Lily on beach. Butterfly magnet visible on cooler in corner of frame. The ceramic piece Lily had made becoming symbol of transformation from fragility to flight. Performing Arts Center under construction. Marcus on site wearing hard hat and reviewing blueprints with contractors. The building rising from foundation toward completion. Fellowship program students presenting designs to panel of established architects. Diversity visible in faces that would have been impossible before systemic change demanded space for previously excluded talent. Patricia Chen receiving honorary award from AIA, recognition coming decades late but arriving nonetheless, institutional acknowledgement of someone who documented injustice when no one else had courage or patience. Text cards appeared over gentle instrumental music that suggested resolution without triumphalism. The Downtown Performing Arts Center opened in September 2025, on time and $3.2 million under budget. It has hosted 340,000 visitors and won 7 architectural awards, including the AIA National Honor Award. Mitchell and Partners Architecture dissolved in 2024. The DOJ settlement totaled $22 million. Vanessa Mitchell now teaches ethics in architecture at Metro Community College. Her course focuses on recognizing unconscious bias. 60% of her students are minorities. But the redemption wasn't erasure of harm, but evidence that people could learn, change, contribute differently after confronting their complicity in systemic oppression. Second chances earned through genuine transformation rather than strategic repositioning. Carson Thompson Design has trained 47 minority architects through its fellowship program. 38 have started their own firms. 100% employment rate for graduates. Marcus and Emma married in June 2025. Lily, now 10, excels in mathematics and wants to be structural engineer. She keeps her mother's beach photo and her butterfly magnet in her room, past and present and future, occupying the same space without contradiction. The DOJ investigation led to 14 additional cases in the architecture industry. 5 major firms faced civil rights charges. Systemic reforms continue. Final image showed completed performing arts center at sunset, building glowing with warm light as people entered for evening performance. Diverse crowd suggesting the demographic future that Marcus's courage had helped make possible. In corner of frame, Lily's butterfly magnet appeared, preserved behind glass in Marcus's office. Ceramic imperfection transformed into symbol of metamorphosis, from humiliation to vindication to systemic change. Final text card appeared. For the 89 architects who were told no, your time is now. The words hung on screen long enough to be read, absorbed, remembered, before fading to black that felt like completion rather than ending, story finished, but implications continuing beyond narrative closure into reality that audiences would inherit and hopefully improve. Marcus's final voiceover emerged from darkness. Sometimes the moments that seem to break us are actually setting us up for our greatest happiness, not because suffering is noble, but because resistance to suffering can transform systems that break others. I stood up not because I was brave, but because staying down would have taught my daughter that dignity was negotiable. It isn't. It never was. And now she knows that, not because I told her, but because she watched me prove it. The screen remained black for 3 seconds of silence, allowing reflection before credits would roll. Space for audiences to process what they'd witnessed and consider their own complicity in a resistance to systems that operated with procedural legitimacy while crushing human potential. Then, quietly, on almost as afterthought, but actually as foundation. If you see someone being pushed down, help them stand. If you see a pattern, document it. If you have power, share it. Change doesn't happen because institutions suddenly develop conscience. Change happens because individuals decide that their temporary comfort matters less than collective justice, and then they act on that decision even when, especially when, acting costs them something. That was the real legacy of Marcus Thompson's 6-month battle, not the Performing Arts Center or the DOJ investigation or even the 47 architects trained through his fellowship program, though all of those mattered. The real legacy was the example of someone who could have withdrawn, could have protected himself and his daughter from institutional retaliation, could have accepted Vanessa's $180,000 offer and lived more comfortably while allowing systemic oppression to continue unopposed. Instead, he chose the harder path, the one that required documenting everything and finding allies and telling truth even when truth seemed unlikely to prevail against institutional inertia. He chose to stand up not because victory was guaranteed, but because sitting down guaranteed nothing would change for the 89 architects whose careers had been destroyed, or the countless others who would face similar machinery in future. And in choosing to stand, he discovered that dignity could not only survive institutional attack, but could become catalyst for transformation that rippled beyond individual victory into systemic reform. That one person's courage could accelerate change that had seemed impossible when scattered individuals fought alone, but became inevitable when evidence accumulated and allies coordinated and truth confronted power. With documentation that couldn't be dismissed as isolated incident or misunderstanding. The butterfly magnet that Lily had made in art class, imperfect and beautiful, became metaphor for metamorphosis from humiliation to vindication to legacy, ceramic wings that couldn't actually fly, but symbolized transformation from caterpillar constraint to butterfly possibility, from being defined by others' cruelty to claiming inherent worth that had always existed but required assertion to become socially recognized. Marcus Thompson's story was one story among 89, but it was the story that broke the pattern, the case that provided evidence and catalyst for DOJ investigation and industry reform and cultural shift in how architecture's institutions related to talent regardless of the skin containing it. Not because Marcus was special, but because he was supported by Emma's partnership, Robert's advocacy network, Patricia's 3 decades of documentation, Lily's innocent faith, and Sarah's memory pushing him toward courage he didn't always feel but consistently performed. The screen faded to complete black, the story finished but the implications continuing. Invitation extended to audiences to consider their own relationship to systems that distribute opportunity unequally and their own capacity to document patterns and support individuals and demand change, even when change costs them temporary comfort. Silence held for 5 seconds before credits would begin, space for reflection that didn't offer easy answers but posed necessary questions about complicity and resistance, individual courage and systemic change, the difference between fighting battles and fighting wars, and the price of dignity in societies that made dignity negotiable based on demographics rather than recognizing it as inherent to human existence. Marcus Thompson stood up and, in standing, created space for 89 others to restart their careers, for 47 students to train without facing the barriers he'd encountered, for his daughter to grow up in a world slightly more fair than the one he'd inherited, and for audiences watching to recognize that change was possible but not inevitable, that it required individuals willing to risk security for justice, and that those individuals deserved support rather than being left to fight alone. The butterfly magnet glowed in the final frame, ceramic imperfection transformed into symbol of hope earned through resistance, and the screen went dark with finality that felt like beginning rather than ending, story concluded but implications extending into futures not yet written but now more possible, because someone had refused to accept that systems couldn't change, that patterns couldn't break, that dignity was anything other than inherent and worth defending regardless of cost.